So why can't Disney oppose your law?
They can.
And why can't they promote this agenda in their viewpoint?
They can.
Without being punished by the state?
They're not being punished. We're just simply removing special benefits that they have had that really weren't justifiable.
They were worse off when it was done than they were before they spoke out.
Well, no. I mean, it was, first of all, we didn't actually do anything to Disney. There was a government that had been in place that they had effectively corrupted, which was not the way it was supposed to be, by the way, if you look at how this started in '68. So we changed the governing structure, which really didn't even impact them directly. They're just indirectly, they don't like it because, they don't get to call the shots anymore. But they are not entitled to corporate welfare. You do not have a constitutional right to corporate welfare.
I know that, but it's not about an entitlement. It's not about entitlement. If I go to my boss and I say, you sexually harassed me, and then suddenly he reduces my salary from $200,000 to $100,000, that's retaliation. I am worse off. And it's not a defense to say, well, everybody else at the company was getting $100,000. You've reduced my circumstance. You've punished me.
No, but that's an employer-employee relationship. I think that's much different.
But this is the state taking away a benefit.
But your position is basically that Florida should be forced to subsidize Disney regardless of how it's going to use those subsidies, so that they can weaponize the subsidies they get from the state and turn it against state policy. Why would we want to subsidize that behavior?
Well,
Why should Florida taxpayers
I get
have to
it.
underwrite that?
But I don't want a President Gavin Newsom doing this to conservative companies or companies who have a more conservative viewpoint.
Well, here's what I would say. I don't think there's any arrangement in America that mirrored the arrangement Disney had in Florida for many, many decades. I mean, I think it was a unique situation.
Nothing quite like Ron DeSantis trying to explain that the thing he did and bragged about isn't the exact thing that he did and bragged about. We literally all saw with our own eyes Ron DeSantis brag about punishing Disney, and now he's insisting that he isn't punishing Disney. When you have Megyn Kelly, a former Fox host who is very clearly aligned with Ron DeSantis on issue after issue, calling him out to his face like this, it's pretty clear that DeSantis' stunt against Disney has backfired and that he's wholly unprepared to answer for it. But for the sake of argument, let's break down exactly why what he's saying is complete BS.
So why can't Disney oppose your law?
They can.
And why can't they promote this agenda in their viewpoint?
They can.
Without being punished by the state?
They're not being punished.
Oh, they're not being punished. Really? Ron DeSantis should probably take that up with Ron DeSantis. Here he is literally saying that he's going to punish them by putting a jail right next to their property because they dare disagree with his Don't Say Gay law.
One of the things they tried to do was put restrictive covenants on the land that the district owns. So if you look at this whole special district, Walt Disney Corporation obviously owns a lot of it, but the district owns other land. And, quite frankly, I wasn't even thinking about that land. This was not something that was really important one way or another. We just wanted them to live under the same rules, pay the debt, pay the taxes, all that stuff. Oh, but come to think of it, now people are like, well, what should we do with this land? And so, it's like, okay, kids, people have said, maybe have maybe create a state park, maybe try to do more amusement parks. Someone even said, maybe you need another state prison. Who knows? I just think that the possibilities are endless, and so that is now going to be analyzed to see what would make the most sense, and that wasn't necessarily even on the radar.
And there it is. He's claiming that he's not just taking away a perk that they had, which, by the way, is still a punishment, as Megyn Kelly points out, but even if you accept the premise that it's not a punishment, he is here saying that he wants to go even further and use the power of the state to specifically target Disney in a way that no other company would be targeted, simply because they released a statement disagreeing with one of his policies. He literally says, and I quote, "That wasn't on the radar, but now it is because they spoke out." It's on camera, and he has the audacity to deny it because he knows his stunt has completely backfired.
We're just simply removing special benefits that they have had that really weren't
They
justifiable.
were worse off when it was done than they were before they spoke out.
Well, no. It was, first of all, we didn't actually do anything to Disney. There was a government that had been in place that they had effectively corrupted, which was not the way it was supposed to be, by the way, if you look at how this started in '68. So we changed the governing structure, which really didn't even impact them directly. They're just indirectly, they don't like it because, they don't get to call the shots anymore.
So now he says the fact that he is installing his personal henchmen onto a government-controlled board that oversees the land that Disney World sits on, that somehow doesn't directly impact them. I don't even think I need to refute that because it is such an obvious lie. Again, the intent behind the move has already been stated out loud by DeSantis. He just didn't realize that his own supporters and allies in the media were going to call him out for it, so he's being forced onto the defensive. DeSantis would then go on to say this.
But they are not entitled to corporate welfare. You do not have a constitutional right to corporate welfare.
I know that, but it's not about an entitlement. It's not about entitlement. If I go to my boss and I say, you sexually harassed me, and then suddenly he reduces my salary from $200,000 to $100,000, that's retaliation. I am worse off. And it's not a defense to say, well, everybody else at the company was getting $100,000. You've reduced my circumstance. You've punished me.
No, but that's an employer-employee relationship. I think that's much different.
But this is the state taking away a benefit.
But your position is basically that Florida should be forced to subsidize Disney regardless of how it's going to use those subsidies, so that they can weaponize the subsidies they get from the state and turn it against state policy. Why would we want to subsidize that behavior?
And now he claims that it's Disney that's weaponizing their state benefits to use against the state government. Except that is patently false. The only thing that Disney did was say that they personally disagree with Florida's Don't Say Gay law, a law so egregiously restrictive that it bans teachers who have same-sex spouses from acknowledging that their spouse exists in the classroom, despite the fact that heterosexual teachers can do so with no problem. Here's what Disney said that caused Ron DeSantis to go on this months-long state-sponsored rampage. Florida's HB 1557, also known as the Don't Say Gay bill, should have never passed and should have never been signed into law. Our goal as a company is for this law to be repealed by the legislature or struck down in the courts. And we remain committed to supporting the national and state organizations working to achieve that. We are dedicated to standing up for the rights and safety of LGBTQ+ members of the Disney family, as well as the LGBTQ+ community in Florida and across the country. That's it. A corporation said they didn't like some of their employees being discriminated against by the state government. So when DeSantis tries to turn this on Disney by claiming they were doing something nefarious, that is a lie, and he knows it's a lie. But because Disney is now being targeted so blatantly, they are thankfully not just sitting back and taking it. For example, after DeSantis tried to install a hand-picked board to oversee Disney, that backfired when Disney showed up Ron DeSantis by using a loophole to strip the board of their power until 2053. And that angered DeSantis so much that he's now suing to try to stop them from outsmarting him. And that lawsuit by DeSantis is one, of course, being footed by Florida taxpayers, all because his ego was shattered by a cartoon mouse. Disney's also openly defying him by announcing that they're hosting the world's largest LGBT conference in Florida, and Disney just hosted a Gay Days event that attracted tens of thousands of LGBT people to Florida in open defiance of the state's discriminatory laws. In fact, because of all this culture war nonsense like this law banning drag shows, targeting transgender people, and teaching that black people benefited from slavery, Florida taxpayers have had to pay at least $16.7 million as of December 2022, an amount that's most likely much higher as of now, because fiscal conservatism or something. Meanwhile, remember this, Florida is currently facing the highest inflation in the United States. Their insurance rates are skyrocketing, with homeowners insurance rates quadruple the national average. And instead of doing anything to actually address that, he's spending his time on stunts that he thinks will help his presidential campaign, only for them to be so obviously stupid to any casual observer that he's forced to ultimately have to defend his awful actions. And this is part of a pattern. For example, he recently signed a new anti-immigrant law that punishes businesses and local governments that allow undocumented immigrants to participate in the economy. And because he is so politically inept, that move predictably backfired on him as immigrants effectively staged a statewide walkout, stalling Florida's economy.
There's like less than 20 people working today. Usually there's about 100. And it's really interesting. I'm wondering how they're going to get this project done without undocumented workers.
No hay trabajadores. Venimos a checar a Miami, a ver si es cierto y es verdad, mira. No hay trabajadores, todo vacío.
Ahora cuénteme, miren, los que quedan están sentados. Porque mira cómo está el trabajo ahí, miren. Y los que quedan están sentados. Esos son los que tienen papeles. Los que quedan. Nunca había visto yo a una gente sentada ahí.
En Del Rey, Florida. Miren, no están los estoqueros, los que conducen las máquinas. Todo se mira desolado. Nadie quiere trabajar. Todo está parado en Florida.
DeSantis is perfectly fine with lighting the entire state of Florida's economy on fire because he's running a losing presidential campaign and is just that desperate to virtue signal to Republicans to show how hateful and xenophobic he can be. And that's not the only stunt that he's pulled against immigrants that's backfired spectacularly on him. He also trafficked innocent families and children seeking asylum to Martha's Vineyard against their knowledge, and instead of owning the libs as he had intended, the whole debacle just instead revealed a stark contrast in how blue states treat immigrants versus Republican governors.
Thank you.
And now, because he clearly hasn't learned his lesson about the pitfalls targeting individual companies to pursue his own culture war agenda, he is suing Bud Light because they gave one sponsored can of beer to a transgender woman on Instagram.
We do have these shares. We believe that when you take your eye off the ball like that, you're not following your fiduciary duty to do the best you can for your shareholders. So we're going to be launching an inquiry about Bud Light and InBev, and it could be something that leads to a derivative lawsuit filed on behalf of the shareholders of the Florida pension fund, because at the end of the day, there's got to be penalties for when you put business aside to focus on your social agenda at the expense of hardworking people.
Are you looking at Disney too? I don't know if you saw the show last night, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Disney's firing 6 of the dwarves. They think being a dwarf isn't inclusive enough, Governor.
Yeah, I know it's hard to keep track with a new MAGA outrage every single day, but yes, that is literally all Bud Light did. Gave a single can of beer to a trans woman, and she posted a 45-second video on Instagram. And he's using taxpayer dollars and the force of the state to go after them for that. Meanwhile, his campaign is plummeting, now standing at only 15%, with Trump 37 points ahead of him, according to 538's latest aggregated polls. But even if DeSantis somehow did manage to beat Trump and become the Republican nominee for president in 2024, he faces massive headwinds with a national electorate because he spent so much of his time passing divisive, extreme, and unpopular policies in his own state in order to win over the MAGA crowd that is simultaneously proving kryptonite among a national audience. Among women, for example, a recent poll shows only 29% of women have a favorable view of him. Another poll found that a supermajority of women, 63%, disapprove of him. So yeah, turns out taking away the rights of half the population and then criminalizing their actions isn't exactly the winning argument on the campaign trail. And yet when even that guy is getting trounced by a twice impeached, twice indicted con man currently facing 71 felony charges, it goes to show just how much of a disaster Ron DeSantis' campaign actually is. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.